Okay, hello and welcome to this introductory Ableton tutorial. So I hope you were able to download or acquire Ableton and you have it all up and running. And when you open it up, it should look a little something like this. If you are using the trial, it may have opened to an example project. If that is the case, just go to File, New Live Set at the top left-hand corner and open to this kind of default blank set, if you will. So I have, set the way my Ableton is set up. Some things might be slightly different, but more or less, I think you should be able to work your way around what I'm saying. So before we even get into using Ableton at all, the first thing you are going to want to do is go over here to the left-hand side. Yours might be drawn out a little bit like that, and you will see this button for Add Folder. And I highly recommend that you add a folder where you keep all of your samples. Try and keep all of the different things that you're bringing in into a centralized place, because of the way Ableton links to things. That can be very helpful and useful as we go forward and you create more projects and move things around, etc. So you can see, for example, I have a folder here that's and within that folder, I have this folder, Spring 2023 Day 1 Sample Pack, and this has all of the things you guys have recorded, which are very, very fun. Flushing the toilet, love it. Ice shaking, something with a door. Yes, so you can click here and you can go through with the arrow keys if you'd like, or with the mouse to listen to these and get a little preview of things. Yes. So now getting into actually, okay, that is going to keep playing. So click there. So it stops. Okay, so getting into Ableton itself. So the first thing you need to know is, first thing you want to do is hit Tab. And then it will change to this arrangement view. This other view is the session view. It's very useful and very cool, but we are not really going to be working with it or using it much in our class. If you don't remember Tab, you can remember that up here in the top right-hand corner, you have this kind of hot dog hamburger sort of situation. We want the hamburger, I guess. Excuse me. So you'll see this arrangement view, which has kind of a more conventional sort of timeline that you might be used to from a video editor or something like that. On the top, we have the numbers using kind of like musical rhythmic notation. So these are bars and measures. And then down here, we have what's going on in seconds. Over here, we have a bunch of different tracks, right? So we can put material onto these 4 different things. We're mostly just going to be focusing on audio for right now, not MIDI. But if you go to your samples and you drag something onto a MIDI track, it will turn into an audio track, so you don't have to worry about that too much. So first things first, let's drag something in. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to look for something interesting. I mean, they're all pretty great, but let's see. There's one with like a bottle that I remember being very crazy. Oh yes, here we go. Amazing. Sounds like a bird or something. So we will drag this clip in. So this is an audio clip now. It's a piece of audio that is in our timeline. We don't have to start necessarily at the very beginning. And wherever we click now, so we clicked and dragged to bring it in, but wherever we click now, that's where our cursor is going to be. And if we hit play, which we will almost never do, if you hit space bar, it will begin to play from there. So in terms of how we play things in the timeline, we can click somewhere and then hit space. And that means that when we hit space again to stop and then hit space again to replay, it will replay from there. You can also go up here. You'll notice that the mouse changes as you move vertically. So it will be a mouse and then it will turn into a little speaker symbol. And that also allows you to play. You may notice there's a little delay before it starts to play. That is because it is like playing in time with the project. Don't really worry about that for now. Then if you go up here, you will see that your mouse changes into a magnifying glass. If you click and drag up and down, you can zoom in and out. And then if you move, click and drag left and right, you can move left and right. For those of you who have a mouse, which I highly recommend, a really nice shortcut is if you hold Command or Control and then you scroll in and out, you can zoom in and out. And I especially like if you have the mouse that goes kind of has the 4-way scroll, like the Apple Magic Mouse allows you to move back and forth as well. So that can make zooming in and out very easy. So yes, here we go. We're hit space to play. Obviously these controls up here in the so-called transport. If you double click the stop button, it will go all the way back to the very beginning of the file and play from there. But otherwise, if you click and hit space, it will allow you to play from there. So pretty straightforward so far. Sorry if I was spending a little too much time on that. But yes, so that's how you move around. So moving around is very important because, I generally find with Ableton, the speed at which you're able to do things really allows you to move quicker and get your ideas down faster. So just practicing moving around can be very important. Now, next we want to talk about what we can do with this audio clip. Well, we can move it around in space. And you'll notice it sort of snaps to the grid, right? So we can pretty easily line it up with all these different grid markings. If you're unfamiliar with musical notation, that is fine. Basically, just consider if you have a whole number like this, that's kind of like a place to start. So it basically just allows you to do certain things with a kind of regularity. We'll talk about that a little bit more as we go on. But yeah, so the main thing we want to talk about now is we have this audio clip, we can move it around, and we can also be chopping up and moving around different pieces of this. So that is kind of the main thing you're going to be doing today. So there are a couple different ways to do that. One way is to click somewhere and hit Command E. And as you can see that now, chopped it there. It's kind of like the blade function in video editing. And now we can move these two things around separately. I'm just hitting Command Z to undo that. Now you may notice that once again, as you move your mouse up and down along this clip, also different things are happening. It is going from the mouse to this little hand. So the distinction here is that the hand actually allows you to move the clip around. And then if it's not in the hand, it is allowing you to select the clip. So I'm clicking and dragging here. You can also click somewhere, hold Shift, and then click somewhere else to select a whole area. And the thing about selecting is, rather than hitting Command E, we can also select an area and then just grab it and pull it away. And if you pull it down, it will create a new audio track. If you want to drag it away and duplicate it, you can hold Alt and you can pull it away and you can create copies, right? So now look, we've got this crazy stuff. Wow, it sounds like we have a whole little animal farm sort of situation going on. Okay, so yeah, so you can pretty much do everything. So the assignment on day one was basically just to make something by arranging these different samples, chopping them up, using certain different pieces, and then just using very, very kind of basic manipulations of things. So chopping them up is one. In terms of chopping them up, you can also copy and paste. So Command C and then click somewhere else, Command V, you can get that there. You can also go in and highlight a certain amount and then hit Command D to duplicate. So we get something like that, which is super fun. And yeah, so let's talk about what you can do with an actual clip now. And then after that, I think I will kind of just show you how I might arrange something. And you can kind of go from there. But yeah, so basically we can select this. We'll hit Command E. Maybe we can drag this down here. So one thing I like to do, and the thing I suggest that you maybe do first, is drag in a longer piece of audio, right? And listen to it. And as you go through, find the little bits that you like. So let's say we're listening here. So this is really cool. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag it down to here. That's really cool. We'll take that. I mean, everything here is really cool. So we're going to take a whole bunch of this stuff. Okay. Now you may be like, oh, well, how do I select things with a finer degree? So one thing you can do is just zoom in, right? So clicking and dragging or hitting command and scrolling, and then it will allow you to kind of select things with a finer degree. You can also right click, change the adaptive grid. We can change it to the narrowest, right? And now it is very narrow. The shortcut to change the grid is command 1 and 2. So you can see I can make it a little bit wider there, or I can make it a bit narrow. Generally, I like to keep it a decently narrow. But yeah, so we can go through. I mean, this is all so cool. So we'll take that. Okay, so let's say those are the pieces that we wanted to work with, right? Now, as you can see, we're kind of using this as like the place we're putting the things we want to work with, and then we're kind of leaving the leftover remnants there. So as we listen through to this and start doing things, we might not want to hear what's here. So we can mute this track now so we don't hear what's there anymore. So to mute, we'll go over here and we'll click this yellow button. And now, so for example, here, you don't hear anything anymore. So you can mute any of the tracks you want. You can mute multiple tracks. You can also, of course, we could also do the opposite. We could solo. So solo is going to make it so we only hear this track, right? So you can click the S to solo. And yeah, okay. So the first thing I recommend doing is just going through and kind of selecting all the things you like. Now, let's go over here and let's start messing around with one of these. So this first thing, so if you click it, if you double click it, you will see all this stuff show up. So it kind of shows you a bigger view of it down here. There's some other stuff you can do here. We're not going to talk about that yet. The main thing you want to be aware of is on the left here. You can go down to audio, and basically the things I want you to mess around with are the gain. So this is basically volume, right? So you can see the waveform growing bigger and smaller. So, right, we can also make it, I mean, with this kind of clip, it's not as relevant, but yeah, there we go. You can change the volume. We can also change the pitch. Now, so we can change the pitch, right? So we can hear that getting much higher in pitch. There we go, much lower in pitch. I'm just clicking this and hitting space to go back to 0 to the default, or you can also type in. So I'm typing in -12, say. And then there's also this button, which is reverse. Right, so now we have that reversed. So yeah, those are basically the 3 things I want you to play around with. Now, you may be wondering, oh, is there somewhere I can stretch this audio? There are a number of ways you can stretch things, and by stretch it, I mean make it longer or shorter. We're going to be talking about those more next time, but the way you can do it is if this warp is yellow, click it to turn it off, and then when you change the pitch, it will get longer and shorter. And obviously, if it gets higher in pitch. And you can kind of think about that like that if you've ever played with a cassette or a vinyl record, right? As it begins to slow down, it goes, right? And yeah, basically the easiest way to change the pitch of something is basically to play it slower or faster. So that's why it ends up changing how long things are. Yeah, so what can we begin to do now? You know, the main thing I'm really thinking about is sample selection. So there's no even need to get too technical here. But let's talk about a couple things that I would recommend you playing around with beyond just, you know, sequencing things in a certain order. So what I'd suggest is, going back to talking about these musical grid lines, right? I would suggest building out like a little loop, if you will, going from one whole number to another, right? So here we can go 18 to 19. Maybe we can do like a little 2-bar loop. So 18 to 20. Right, so we can start to maybe put all of these a little closer together. Now you can use these grid lines to make something happen like regularly, right? So maybe we want this to always occur for the first thing, and then we want this to occur, you know, on the the kind of halfway point, right? And you'll be able to hear that a little better if we just duplicate this with Command D. Right, so it allows you to kind of make things happen with certain regularity. Now, it would be annoying to obviously have to, constantly keep replaying this. So what we can do to make things a little easier for us is we can click over here at the beginning of our loop at 18, hit Shift, and then click over here at 20, and we can hit Command L, or we can click this button at the top, and that will create these little loop things. Now, this does not mean if you exported this or your final song is going to loop, it just plays it that way so that you can kind of focus on experimenting. So I don't know how loud this stuff is, unfortunately. Let me check my OBS. Okay, hopefully that's not too crazy of a volume, and hopefully I'm a bit louder. I'll turn it down a little more. But yeah, so I suggest trying to build out like a little loop, right? So I'm going to mute this, and I'll just sort of I'll kind of take a second to begin to make something that maybe sounds interesting to us. And I hope you obviously take advantage of the ability to layer and duplicate here. Okay, so... Okay, so this is kind of, well, maybe reverse this and put it at the end here. And then maybe we'll put another one of these, and I'll double click and I'll maybe change the pitch. And actually, you know what? Let's make one of these like much longer. Ooh, okay, that's cool. So now I'm like, that's a really fun sound. So maybe I'll just loop that. And also to make things longer and shorter, right? If you move to the side at the top and hit these brackets, you can start to change the length of the clip. Okay, so I kind of like that. So I'm going to duplicate that. Maybe I'll do something like this, duplicate the whole thing. And I kind of liked how that was sounding at the end. Oh, actually, no, it's this part, right? Now, if you want to make some more slight adjustments, you can hold Command and then use the arrow keys to get things slightly off of the grid. You want a cool, unquantized feel. So we'll put that there. And maybe let's make this a little bit longer, not too much more. And this is kind of a cool, like, sort of percussive sound. And maybe I'll take this and now once you have something like this kind of built up, you want to maybe begin building some variations, right? So we have this part kind of stays the same, and then we have it repeated here, but maybe let's make the end slightly different. So one kind of fun way to do that, rather than going and searching for another clip, is within this clip, in the bottom part, I can hold Shift Alt, and then I can kind of actually scroll by clicking and dragging with Shift Alt. I can kind of scroll through the clip, right? So now I have, I've changed it to this part of like that original clip that we had it out of. This is kind of cool, actually. And then maybe we'll reverse it the other way. And I think if we zoom in, that will give us a little bit of finer control on how to move it. Okay, there we go. Okay, great. So now let's talk about two other sort of, that's pretty much it, right? And then I'll talk a little bit more about how you can kind of build up more and more things. But let me show you two other sort of techniques that I think can be really interesting for working for. So one, I want to get like a more consistent sound, or like a, so this sound, right, it had very well-defined sense of like, oh, here's the sound of this. It wasn't like ambiance or something. So let me get something. Perfect. Yeah, this is kind of funny. So let's get this, right? So I have this, Now, when we have these like longer things, what we can do, I'm just hitting backspace to delete those. So one thing we can do with kind of longer stuff like this is we can start to play with these fades. Now the fades are when you mouse over, you'll see these little boxes here. And so what you can do with those is create like a fade in the volume so it smoothly slopes up and down. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to try and make like a little bit like of a kick, like a bass drum kind of noise, right? So I'm going to really raise the volume a bunch. Oh, it's very loud now. Turn that down. And then I'm going to pitch it down a lot. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the fade to kind of give it this little percussive tail. Well, not percussive, but it kind of makes it into, okay, here's a little bit more of like a single sound, like a single hit, right? And we can, right, kind of have that repeating. I think that sounds a little weird because there's kind of that tone to it. Let's see if we can find something that has a bit more like, oh yeah, here we go. So we're just kind of outside. So let's just take like this kind of noise, right? And this should allow us to make something good. A lot of drum sounds are synthesized just from kind of random noise like this. Okay, right? And then we'll go. Right, so if we really pitch it up, then we can get almost like this kind of snare type sound. So I'm going to just turn the volume up even more. Okay, and then, yeah, let's start to put that into our loop. I'll put that here and here. Let's see if we can get one more thing. Let's see if we can find some low boomy thing that we can make into our kind of a kick-like noise. Let's see if we can get something out of this. So a lot of times I'm just honestly guessing, looking at the kind of like the waveforms, seeing what's there. Okay. So I'm soloing this track. Okay, there's not quite a sharpness to this that we need, but maybe. Oh, maybe even that. Oh, there we go. Okay. So I'm going to take this, push it down. Actually, maybe we'll leave the warp on. Okay. Okay, shorten it and use the phase again. Yeah, it might be the best we can do for now with these limited, slightly more limited set of tools. But I think that's good. It doesn't have a ton of super low bassy end, but it does have that kind of percussive element. Okay, so let's listen to our loop now. Okay, so maybe let's get these. Get some of these here instead. Now you can also move these things around, the clips around with your arrow keys. And again, we can hit Command 1 to get a little bit finer in our usage of things. So I can hit Command D and then I can immediately move that clip with the arrow keys. Now you may notice I was also playing around with these numbers here. These numbers will allows you to basically lower the volume on every single track. If you hit delete on this, it will go back to 0. I don't suggest pushing this above 0. I would always just lower it. If you want to make something louder, I would actually double click on the clip and increase the gain. There you can see you can really increase the gain if you'd like. So yeah. Right, so there we go. We kind of have this like somewhat interesting loop. Now, the few other things I want to show you are, let's get like so the next thing to do is you can begin to see with some of this stuff we've begun to manipulate it, right? So now let's say we have this, right? So in terms of building out something, right, we've made this kind of little loop, right? So what I'd suggest doing next is if you highlight part of this whole thing, you can highlight it or click here and click Shift and click the end there. And then if you hit Command Shift D, that will duplicate the whole time, right? And then what you can basically do is, okay, now let's make some sort of variation here, right? So right now we have the same thing. So maybe let's take out this sound, right? And then let's go here. And now this is kind of where things can start to get a little fun. We can click this and we can click over here to select all of these, and we can hit Command J. And that will consolidate this into a whole new clip. And so then what we can do is we can manipulate that whole thing on its own. So maybe we'll drag it over here and we can hit reverse, and now we'll reverse the whole thing, and we can pitch it up a ton. Right, and there we're even starting to get some weirder sounds with it. And we can go through, and so what you can kind of start to do is go through and start to make these little adjustments. So say Command Alt Shift to change different parts of things, right? We can duplicate some stuff, we can reverse some stuff, duplicate, and you can kind of make something new, right? So it doesn't sound that different, but and then what you can do is you can hit Command J to consolidate, and then you can go through and start to do that again. And with these ones, right? So we'll take these, maybe we'll increase the volume, we'll increase the pitch. Then with this, we'll hit Command E, we'll hit R to reverse it, and we'll increase the pitch there. Then for this bit, maybe we'll reverse it, and we'll turn the volume up, and we'll turn the pitch down. And with this, maybe we'll make this like also kind of lower in volume. Right, so starting to get some more of these glitchy noises. And if you really like that sort of glitchy sound, what you can really begin to do is go in and find a really, really small bit and just copy that a ton, right? And maybe get a slightly bigger bit, and we'll get that, and we'll like turn the pitch all the way up, and then you'll start to get some of those glitchier noises. Right, so go here, duplicate this a bunch, turn the volume up, and really we'll pitch it up, right? Okay, great. So, right, and so then we can take that whole thing and hit Command J, duplicate. So really this whole process of like editing, consolidating, editing over and over, that's really like, that's kind of the whole class in a nutshell, and then just making these variations. And so in terms of like building up, a whole, let's reverse this one, right? In terms of building up like a bigger and bigger piece, I would say, give yourself a goal of maybe doing something that's 30 seconds long or something, right? Again, now we would take this whole thing again, and we can duplicate it, right? And then maybe this time we'll say, okay, now we want like another element. So maybe let's get this in here, and we can pitch this up. You might notice with the pitching, I often go in kind of like increments of 24. That kind of corresponds with like the musical scale. So plus 12 is like an octave. There are 12 semitones before things kind of repeat themselves. So it can be a good increment to work with, but don't worry about it too much, to be totally honest. Oh, wow, this sounds really cool when we pitched it up. That's awesome. So maybe even we'll get rid of this now. And then maybe this one will kind of have it like fade out and this can fade in. So let's listen now. Okay, so let's listen from a little farther back. Right, so can go in here, make some variations. Maybe at the end here we'll have like a nice little glitchy bit as well. Turns all the way up. You can have have this happen. Reversing this is probably not going to do too much, but maybe we can have that volume happen, and we'll make like that sort of thing that makes it into a more percussive sound. So let's hear that. Yeah, that's cool. So we can copy that, put it here, duplicate it, reverse it, turn the volume up, and turn the pitch down. Right, so now maybe let's take like this whole thing, copy it, put it here, Command J, turn warp off, then pitch it down so it's like twice as long, and then we'll get some of these and we can begin to put these in, and we can start to put some of these in here. Okay, and maybe we'll get this thing back in and really raise the volume on that, and let's just get like a ton of them there. And maybe turn the, maybe we'll change this a little. Okay, and get this thing over here, turn the pitch all the way down, maybe reverse it actually, and then maybe we'll turn warp off, and we can like really make it much smaller, and we can put like a bunch of these. Okay, who knows even what's this gonna sound like, but it's all about the happy accidents, you know. So yeah, I mean that's pretty much it, right? So we can do one more section here. Maybe let's get, so now let's maybe go back and get some of our original, well, I know there's so much of those samples that we didn't even work with, even though they're really cool. But maybe let's make something interesting out of this. Let's see. Yeah, that's kind of cool. We can take this part out. And what other things do we have here? Maybe we can just do like even a different section here. Can reverse this. Get this elevator ding. Yeah, I'm kind of liking these moments of silence that we're having. Yeah, maybe we really bump this up. That's crazy. Yeah, starting to get some of these nice variations here. And then we'll take like a really little piece of that and put it here. Probably won't be able to hear that actually, but we could maybe tease it up here. So. Okay, great. So there's like a whole crazy thing that we made. So what you can do now to like export it is click at the very beginning, click at the very end. You can hit Command L, and that, so you want to put everything in the loop bars. And then if you hit Control Shift R or go to File Export, you can export this, and you just want the rendered track to say master. File type could be AIF or WAV. Why don't do AIF if you don't have a strong feeling? Then hit export and save it somewhere. But yes, don't ever send me or try to submit like your actual Ableton file. Always export to like an actual audio file. It's going to make things a lot easier for me, and also because of the way I might not even be able to open your project if I don't have all of the samples and things. But yeah, so let's just, to end here, we'll kind of play through what we have. So yeah, maybe not particularly good, but some interesting sounds there. And yeah, really fun use of some of this found sound stuff. Awesome. Hope you enjoyed. And if you have any questions, I know I might have been moving quickly or using certain keyboard shortcuts that you couldn't hear. So always feel free to message me for anything you need further explanation on.